here. I can't wait to dive in with you to learn more about ourselves on a spiritual and a creative level. If you don't know who I am, my name is Alaura Lovelight. I'm an R&B singer, songwriter, producer, published writer, and motivational speaker. And I could not be more excited about being here with you guys in this setting on this platform. So my intention for this show is to give you a little bit of space and to give you a little bit of time to think a little bit more, to feel more in touch with yourself, to get a little bit creative, and to learn how to create from a spiritually conscious level. We have tons of fun segments for you guys, tips and practical application steps, books that I like to read, and of course, some great music. So I'm glad that you're here. I hope that you'll tune in each and every week to learn about the willingness that it takes to join that creative side of you to that spiritual side of you and live a more empowered and fulfilled life that you love. Welcome to the show. Today we're talking all about the willingness to ask. To me, the willingness to ask is one of the most important things that you need in order to take your life from wishing and wanting to creating and doing. This willingness is so vital, especially for creative people. Remember, we're all creative. So this is really important to create the life that you love. If you're in a creative field, like writing or painting or dancing or sports or whatever it might be, lots of people want that opportunity. Even if you're in a job and you want a raise, there's a really good chance that somebody else wants that raise too. And if they have the willingness to ask and you don't, who do you think gets the opportunity? Probably that person, right? So you need to have the willingness to ask. So what is it that holds us back from asking for what we want if we know that it could change our life and we know it's something that we want? Unfortunately, I believe that the number one thing that holds us back from asking for what we want is limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs tend to happen at an early age when kids pick on us or make fun of us for asking questions in class, which was definitely me. Or as adults, we go down this road of being judged by our peers for taking risks or going after things that we want that they might be too afraid to go for. If this happens at a time in our life where we're unconscious of the outside influence on our life, it causes us to be fearful, to be disappointed, to be embarrassed, and to be afraid of rejection. Then we take those experiences and we store them in our brain, and then we use our survival mode the next time something threatens to make us feel embarrassed or feel disappointed or feel afraid. This creates a limiting belief that we tell ourselves before somebody else has the opportunity to make us feel badly. But the truth is, stop doing that. It is not serving you, and they have nothing to do with the thing that you're asking for. So what if they judge you? So what if they put their nose up at you? So what if they talk about you? Who cares? If you want something, you need to go after it. And that's plain and simple. Jack Canfield talks about it so perfectly in one of my favorite books called The Aladdin Factor. He says, think about it. You already don't have that thing you're going to ask for, so what do you really have to lose? And that's so true. That totally changed my perspective when going into an ask type scenario. I would go in and say, okay, worst case scenario, they laugh at me, they judge me, they talk about me, they tell their friends, and I don't get the opportunity. But best case scenario, it changes my life. And I'm willing to take a chance in case it changes my life. In this show, we're going to bring you all sorts of tips and practical application and thought-provoking questions and blog posts and special guests to help you develop further the willingness to ask or whatever the topic of the week. So make sure you stick around to the end of the episode so that you can get the 3 takeaways of how to apply this willingness to your life in order for you to get the things that you want to ask for. So here's the thing, before we get into the willingness to ask for a raise, or ask for a job, or ask to get paid, we first have to talk about the willingness to ask our divine power. You can call it God, you can call it source energy. Wayne Dyer used to call it Louise. I love that. Whatever it is, we all come from this divine source energy, higher power. And first we have to understand our worthiness to ask God and ask the universe for the things that we want. I decided to get a little help from one of my very favorite spiritual teachers and channelers, Esther Hicks. Esther Hicks is an American inspirational teacher, channeler, author, and one of my very favorite spiritual teachers that there is. I have learned so much from her, and I have learned all about the willingness to ask through these spiritual teachings. She describes what she's doing as tapping into infinite intelligence. Their best-selling book and one of my all-time favorite books is called Ask and It Is Given. It offers 22 different processes and exercises for understanding the law of attraction and how to apply it to the willingness to ask. I decided for this episode to share a few quotes from the book that I love. One of my all-time favorite quotes from the book is, "When you change the things you look at, the things you look at change." Another quote from the book says, "With your practice attention to any subject, the law of attraction delivers circumstances, conditions, experiences, other people, and all manners of things that match you." Variety causes contemplation. Contemplation produces preference. Preference is asking, and asking is always answered. Lastly, one of my very favorite quotes from the book, she says, "That is the optimal creative vantage point. To stand on the brink of what is coming, feel eager, optimistic anticipation with no feeling of impatience, of doubt, or unworthiness hindering the receiving of it. That is the science of deliberate creation." These are just a few quotes from an amazing book, chock full with information and action steps towards asking. I have been listening to Abraham for years, and it has truly changed my life. So I highly suggest you check out the book. You can check it out at the QR code next to us, or you can go to lovelightsoundmusic.com and find it on the bookshop. So now that we've discussed the willingness to ask from a spiritual perspective, now we want to dive into the practical application of the willingness to ask. As I mentioned before, Jack Canfield is one of my all-time favorite authors, and I have read many of his books many times. He is the author of the extremely successful New York Times best-selling book, Chicken Soup for the Soul. Jack Canfield also wrote a book called The Aladdin Factor, which I mentioned earlier in the episode. I have read this book and listened to this audiobook multiple times to really sink in the understanding of the willingness to ask. His website features a video called Dare to Ask for What You Want. He breaks down the reasoning we don't ask and how having the willingness to ask can change our lives. He offers a quote from one of his mentors, W. Clement Stone, who said, "Remember, if there's something to gain from asking and nothing to lose by asking, by all means, ask." Makes perfect sense, right? Why would you not ask if there's something to gain and nothing to lose? Jack's first tip is that you have to be willing to ask repeatedly. This one is really important because a lot of people do have the willingness to ask. Maybe you're one of those people who has the willingness to ask one time or two times. But the truth is, you have to be willing to ask until you get a result that you want. His next tip is that you have to reject rejection. He tells a story about how Chicken Soup for the Soul got rejected like 130 times by multiple different publishers. And we all know that 1 time feels like scary, the 2 times feels like, but they asked over and over and over, and it became a New York Times best-selling book, one that I read as a kid many, many times and had all of the different versions of Chicken Soup for the Soul. You have to reject rejection. You have to accept that you may get a lot of no's, but you have to know that if somebody says no, you just have to ask somebody else. He has a quote. He says, SW, 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 SW. That stands for some will, some won't, so what, someone's waiting. Jack Canfield encourages you to keep taking action. And this show is all about giving you practical application steps and resources to help you level up in every area of your life. Jack Canfield has so many amazing other books that I highly suggest. My 2 favorite are The Aladdin Factor, which we just talked about, or Success Principles, which is another one that has amazing practical application steps. So you can check those ones out too. Over here at the QR code will take you directly to it. Or, of course, you can go to lovelightsoundmusic.com and find them on the bookshelf. This week I got to sit down with one of my favorite artists, creatives, people, spirits, Alaura Show. Alaura Show has toured with some amazing people, and she knows all about what it takes to have the willingness to ask.
Though it was taboo,
Coming up.
faux pas, frowned upon, I did go and offer her my CD.
Yes.
What ended up happening is she ended up signing me to her record label, put me in the studio with every incredible musician and producer in Los Angeles. You get to get comfortable with that. It's not about if anybody likes you. It's can you make an impact?
Did you know that in the book Regrets of the Dying, the number 1 regret people said that they had was that they said, I wished I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected of me. Wow. There are so many people out there who dream about what it would be like to pursue their creativity. Whether that means making an income through their craft, dedicating more time to the thing that they love, or even trying something that they always wanted to try. We often encourage each other to try new things, put ourselves out there, and do our best, but we don't always give the same encouragement and support to ourselves that we give to others. Love Light Sound Music wants to remind you that it's not just enough to have a passion for creativity, but it's necessary to have a willingness to try, a willingness to fail, a willingness to get rejected and ask again. It's not always easy to put ourselves out there with something that's so vulnerable like our creativity. But guess what? Those who do feel happier, more confident, and they have less regrets. My name is Alaura Lovelight, and my willingness has opened the door to so many opportunities. From my willingness to ask for a job and end up working for an A-list Hollywood film composer, to my willingness to put myself out there and become a published writer to websites with over 5 million readers, to even my willingness to get rejected and get my music on hundreds of radio stations worldwide. The Willing Creative is a bi-monthly live interactive group conversation with me to unlearn negative self-talk, push past false limiting beliefs that you have, and challenge yourself to see just what you are really capable of. Listen, it's time to face your fears about what's holding you back from doing something that you really want to do. Stop making excuses about why you can't, why you don't have time, why you'll do it later. It's time right now to take action. Don't let another day go by with that burning passion for something creative just sitting inside you and end up being one of those people with the regret of not having the willingness to try. The Willing Creative has a private Facebook community for support and encouragement. You will get to map out practical application steps for your goals, and you meet twice a month with a group of other creatives to make sure you stay accountable and on track. Give it a try and see why hundreds of people have worked alongside me to develop their gift and passion. There's even a 30-day money-back guarantee. This podcast is partnered with The Willing Creative, and our listeners get the first month free. So click the link below to learn more and join me in The Willing Creative.
Veteran soul vocalist Alaura Show has spent over a decade touring with the world with writing songs and singing backgrounds for several legendary artists we all know and love, including Roberta Flack, Macy Gray, Joss Stone, Lord, and many others. She's the inventor of the Sea Saver Singer Straw, a uniquely designed vocal warm-up tool built to make vocal exercises safe and more effective for singers and professional speakers. She's also a member of a psychedelic hip-hop puppet music group called the Fungineers, is that right? Who travel the Funiverse, yes, singing relatable bangers in a not-so-average kids show for adults. Thank you for being here. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me, sis.
Yes. I asked you to be a part of this show because I know that, for this week, we're talking all about the willingness to ask. And I know that you know.
Yeah.
I know you know what it's like. I know you know what it's like to ask and to not ask. And as creatives, it's really important for us to have that willingness to do that. I'm curious because I actually don't know, with all of the people that you have worked with and performed with and written with, just being an amazing artist, I'm curious, like for myself, there's definitely been some touch points in my career where I'm like, I know I got to the next level because I was willing to ask and make that silence of that ego and all of those things. So I'm curious, does anything come to mind when we're talking about Roberta Flack, we're talking about Joss Stone, we're talking about Lord?
So we do a double headline bill with Macy Gray for a bus tour around America. So this is like 2 months or a month or 6 weeks or something, where we're on 2 different buses and we're playing venue after venue with Macy Gray. And, it's always like, it's a double headline. So who's going to go first? Who's opening? And there's all this like dynamic going on.
Right.
And in my mind, I'm like, Macy Gray is an incredible artist who has some of the results I want to create for my life.
Sure.
So, even though it was taboo, faux pas, frowns upon, I did go and offer her my CD. And I said, listen, I know I'm not supposed to do this, but just take a listen when you get a chance. And the next day she called my hotel room. She was like, we listened to your record on the bus, and
nice.
I can really tell you know what you're doing.
That was a good impression.
You sound real good. Thank you very much. And in that moment, like having her ring me to tell me she liked my music, that was
So
really
cool.
important for me.
Yes.
And what ended up happening is she ended up signing me to her record label.
Wow.
And for 3 years, she put me in the studio with every incredible musician and producer in Los Angeles. When you talk about the willingness to ask, a lot of things come to mind, because there have been many moments in my life that opportunities showed themselves and I either had the courage to jump in or did not.
No.
And the willingness came with courage as I learned my own worth and as I got more connected to that I matter, that I make an impact, that I am incredibly valuable. You're as worthy and as valuable as you say.
Right.
I've actually met D Smoke before. He's an incredible rapper, and I've written a song with his mother, and we've had moments.
Yeah.
And I saw him, and I went through, he might not remember me. Or I made up some story and I walked by and I didn't say hello. And then later in the day, I walked past him again and said, oh, hey, I wrote a song with your mom and I'm friends with you. Blah, blah. Do you remember me? And he was like, hey, and he gave me a big hug. And it was just like, yeah. And how easy is that? Because he's actually just a human being, but everybody feels it. I don't care what level you're at.
So interesting that you tell that story when I read your bio and people say, oh my God. And then that's so relatable, because for the viewers of the show, it's like, that's the point. We want them to feel, hey, I'm going through this. And it's like, we put each other on different pedestals, right? And it's like, we all experience that willingness to ask or not ask, or that little voice in our head. So kudos to you for going back around and saying, no, we're not letting that be the narrative.
If you can remember that you are an incredibly powerful being,
Mm-hmm.
you begin to practice really like being present to the thoughts that go through your head. So when
Right.
I walked past D Smoke yesterday, I was able to notice because I've practiced that neural pattern long enough and often enough that immediately I was like, "Oh, honey," instead of berating myself, belittling myself, I just said, "Hey, notice what you just did there.
Yes. Yes.
How could I have done it differently? What worked about that and what did not work? What's the
Mm,
result you want to create?"
right.
The result I want to create is a deepening of our connection so that one
Sure.
day when he needs a vocalist, he's like, "Oh, that girl, honey, she's bad and she's also a really good hang.
That's
Let
right.
me call her."
The whole point, especially of our episode about the willingness to ask, is that, we talk about manifestation and we talk about understanding that everybody kind of has a different level of understanding on that. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's important, especially for creative people, to understand that manifestation, law of attraction, and all of those things we're talking about go hand in hand with the willingness to take action, the willingness to believe in yourself, the willingness to say, no, that's not the narrative I want to tell. Let me walk by again and try again. That's not a thing that goes away. It's a thing
No.
that you tame.
I'm willing to take this risk. I'm willing to be judged and I'm willing to be rejected, but I get to try.
That's right. Wow.
So when I begin my next project, I will have that willingness to ask.
Right.
I will be able to say, "Hey, I know we haven't spoken in a long time. I'm looking to produce this. I'm looking for keys on this tune.
Yeah.
Will you do it?"
That's amazing. And I think that goes to show, and same for my story, that your willingness for one opportunity was like a doorway for so many things you didn't know about.
Totally.
And a lot of people, I think, miss those opportunities, and it's like you don't know that that's the root of the whole tree. It's not one thing that, oh, they won't care, or oh, you're not allowed to do that. There's so many things I think we talk ourselves out of, where it's like, definitely I've had experiences where I'm like, yeah, this is definitely not good etiquette and all of that. And it's like, but that willingness to overcome that and ask put you in places, I mean, for years, still to this day, that you're saying, I can call these people for my next project how many years later? Like, that's an incredible thing. And I think if nothing else motivates people to ask, the possibility of something like that should make people think twice in a situation.
Don't talk yourself out of it.
Right.
Listen, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Okay. It's not even just a willingness to ask, it's really a willingness to be judged and be disliked. You get to get comfortable with that. It's not about if anybody likes you, it's can you make an impact for someone? Can your presence, can your being be enough to shift energy in anyone else's life?
There's levels, right? It's like some people are just so scared and don't have that self-love or self-worth to ask one time. Then you have a next level of people who are like, yeah, I have this willingness to ask, but I've asked. I sent the email, I didn't get a reply. Sometimes that email went to their spam.
Right.
They didn't even get it. They didn't reject you.
Have the follow-up, baby.
Yeah, like you have to ask again. Hey, did you get my email? Hey, I wanted to make sure you got my message. Hey, blah, blah, blah. Like,
yeah.
So there's so much like that's
that.
necessary in that willingness to ask and ask and ask again. Definitely.
Yes. Know that every single interaction you have has the possibility of completely transforming the trajectory of your life, right? If we're headed in this direction and we shift 1 degree.
That's right.
The difference in 3 months is 180 degrees. We've gone completely left turn here.
Yeah.
So these minute changes that we're making all the time, every choice that we make is actually affecting the entire trajectory. So if we could be intentional about the results, the desires, the dream, the vision that we're creating, knowing how powerful you are. if anybody listening takes nothing else from this interview,
Mm-hmm.
think about what it feels like when you get a chance to help someone in need, big or small. And then think about when you need help, if you don't ask anyone to help you, you are depriving them of that opportunity to feel that blissful feeling. Every time you ask and you succeed and you're received with positivity.
Right.
You get to like carry that, put it in your little box of wins,
Huh?
your
Yep.
collection of proof, your evidence box,
Right.
and then have it to replace any other evidence you've collected that you don't matter, that you're not valuable, or that you aren't enough.
Yes. I love that so much. Thank you for being you. Thank you for everything you're putting into the industry. Like, it's so important for artists to have that, to understand that willingness. And it starts with ourselves, our willingness to love ourselves and our willingness to really dig in. So I love everything you're doing. I knew you'd be perfect for this. So thank you for being here. And we can't wait to share you with our audience and learn more about you.
Such a pleasure. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. When I tell you that my team and I had the hardest time clipping this interview down into a smaller version for the show, I promise you there were so many jewels and so many nuggets. So make sure that you go over to lovelightsoundmusic.com to get exclusives and behind the scenes of my full interview with Alaura Show. And you can subscribe to the free newsletter at lovelightsoundmusic.com. So initially I had wanted to create a segment called Ask Alaura, where people write in and they ask questions about the willingness of the week, willingness to ask and the willingness to go within and all of those things. It occurred to me that maybe we should call the segment Alaura Asks instead of Ask Alaura. Maybe it's more beneficial to you if I ask you and you ask yourself. So take a minute, a quiet space, maybe write these down and answer these 3 questions with me to help you further develop your skills for the willingness to ask. First, I want you to ask yourself, what's that thing that I want to ask for? Maybe it's something new. Maybe it's something that you never thought about before. Maybe it's something that you've been wanting for a really long time and you just didn't know how to ask. Whatever it is, I want you to think about that 1 or 2 things that you would love to ask for. I love so much how children unapologetically ask. They ask for something they want, they ask for help, they always ask, and it's very innocent and very unapologetic. They don't feel embarrassed, they don't feel guilty for asking for help, they don't feel undeserving. Just ask. So tap into your inner child and think about something that you would like to ask for if you could ask for anything. Maybe it's asking the universe, maybe it's asking God, and maybe it's asking in real life. Maybe you've been wanting to ask for a raise. Maybe you've been wanting to try singing and ask for a teacher. Maybe you would like to ask for an opportunity at work. Next, I want you to think about, why haven't you asked? Think about it. Why haven't you asked for that thing that you want, for that new job, for that new relationship, for a raise? Do you feel scared of being rejected maybe? Do you feel unsure about how exactly to go about asking and you just don't know? Think about why you haven't asked. And what are the limiting beliefs, like we talked about in the beginning, that might be holding you back? Next, I want you to visualize asking for the thing that you want. And I want you to visualize the best case scenario. Sometimes we tend to fall into visualizing that worst case scenario. But what if you visualize the best case scenario? It's really important to be unattached from the outcome, but if you can script it exactly how you would want it to go, what would that look like? What would it be like to get a raise? What would it be like to get an opportunity of a lifetime that you've been wishing for? What would it be like to ask your family for a little bit more help? Visualize it so vividly and pay attention to how your body feels. Are you excited? Are you nervous? Are you embarrassed or kind of shy or worried about what they might say? Pay attention to how your physical body is reacting. You might be surprised by the fact that you can visualize something so vividly that your body has a physical reaction. Your hands could start to sweat, your heart could start to race, or you could maybe have a smile on your face. This is because our brain doesn't even know the difference between something that we're visualizing or imagining and something that happens in real time. It's the same thing in our brain that triggers our stomach to drop when we're in a virtual reality, just sitting in a seat, but we feel like we're falling 1,000 feet. That's where you start. Once you can identify that physical response, you can overcome any feelings of fear, of embarrassment, of worry. All of those things are going to come up when you visualize it, and that's where you can change the narrative. Make sure that you head over to my Instagram at Alaura Lovelight and you share with us what is the willingness to ask that you would like to ask. What's that one thing that you want to ask for that you're deciding you're going to be brave enough to ask for, or you decided I haven't thought about this before, but I know it's something that I would really like. Go find my Instagram post at Alaura Lovelight and leave a comment. We love to connect with the audience. We love to know how you're benefiting from the show and how it's improving your life. As promised, before we go, I'm going to leave you with 3 takeaways so that you can take this into your week, into your day, into your month, into your job, and have more of a willingness to ask. So step 1 is to be realistic. Be realistic about all the possible outcomes that could happen in this scenario. It's true. You could get laughed at, you could get judged, and you could not get the opportunity that you're asking for. But do any of those change your circumstance or your situation right now? Is it also possible that somebody could say, I'm so glad that you asked. Yes, I would love to XYZ. Yes, that's also possible. Not only is it possible, it's just as possible as if somebody was to say no. This might be the first time ever that you've even considered this, but there are many, many people out there who have the thing that you're looking for, and you have the thing that they're looking for. Sometimes we downplay our value, our worthiness, but actually you asking for an opportunity might be something that they need. There are people all over the world who have tons of money, but they don't have your talent. They don't have your creativity. They're great investors. That's their role. So don't feel like you're asking and you're taking away from somebody, because you're really contributing to the situation if they say yes. The next one is a little bit harder. The next one is to be unattached. I know that this one is a little bit harder because if we're asking for something, it's probably because we want it. I totally get that. But you have to trust the universe that it will manifest what you want, whatever it is, in some form or fashion. It might be this way that you're asking, and it might not be this way you're asking, but you have to ask and be unattached from the outcome. If you are, you will go in, you will be less anxious, you will be less worried about the answer that they give, and more excited about whatever the outcome is, because you trust and know that whatever that thing you're asking the universe for, you're asking God for, is coming to you in some way. Lastly, step 3, before you go into your ask, get clear on your worthiness. Our worthiness to have and to do and to be all the things that we want is a really big reason a lot of us don't even ask to begin with. We don't feel worthy to receive that money or receive that job or receive that raise. But change your perspective before you go in for the ask. Before you ask for a raise, Think about how much value you are adding to the company, you are adding to your boss. Before you ask somebody for help, think about how you contribute to their life. And if this particular ask doesn't work out the way that you want it to, be mindful to not take it personally, because the universe has something better for you, or something different for you, or another path that you need to follow. That's all we have for today's show. I am so glad to share this space with you and this time. I hope that you got something out of this episode and that you feel more empowered to have the willingness to ask for the things that you want. A special thank you to our guests, Alaura Show, to our teachers, Jack Canfield and Abraham Hicks. As always, I have to say shout out to the team. We love the team at Love Light Sound Music and everything that they're doing to contribute to bringing you guys this show. Remember to be present and be aligned and be willing to receive all the things that are already meant for you. Peace, positivity, and love to you kings and queens. I can't wait to see you next week. See you then.